Hello and welcome to episode 39 of Bloggers Are Weird. I am your host, DJ Paris, from the blog thoughtsfromparis.com, and I am very excited, before we get started today, to announce I will be speaking at Blog U 2015, which is a conference on the East Coast in Baltimore, June 5th through the 7th, and it's going to be amazing. I had signed up for it prior to even knowing that I'd be speaking there, going there just as an attendee, and I think there's a few tickets left. It really, honestly, in my sincere opinion, will be the conference of the year, and I go to all of them, and I'm so excited to not just be somebody who will be there, but actually be presenting. I will be talking with a few other people on podcasting and why, if you are a blogger, you really, really, really should do it. And I am somebody who never wanted to be on the radio, never wanted to have a podcast. And the only reason I got into it was I went to a conference where I went to a seminar and I said, all right, well, I'll go. I don't really care about being a podcaster. And I got turned around in 45 minutes. And then I walked out of there and said, I got to do this. And it has been really helpful to introduce me to new audiences and also give back to the community that has been so supportive of me. As you know, I interview other bloggers. And so it's really worked out quite well, and it's a lot of fun. And so I'll be talking more about how to do it, why to do it, along with a few other people. So if you haven't heard of Blog U, or you are thinking about going, really, honestly, there's probably only a handful of tickets left. So if there are any at all, go to bloguconference.com and register. Today on the show, we have the great Oona LaMarche, whose newest book, Unabrow, is out in bookstores as well as online. It's an insanely funny memoir from an insanely funny person, and I'm very excited to have spoken with her. The other thing about it, too, is she is a great example of what can happen if you work really hard and you're really funny. And now this is her full-time gig. She's been a career writer, but now she gets to write what she wants as opposed to what other people tell her to do. And we talk all about how she made that transition. So grab a boot full of rosé or whatever your drug of choice is. I'm currently doing some research on bath salts because they're legal, right? And then I don't know that there's but then I like baths too. So if I decide not to ingest them, I could just, get clean or whatever. But anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Bloggers Are Weird is sponsored by moreblogreaders.com. Moreblogreaders.com is the home for the greatest teacher of how to build a business and get more readers for your blog, Darren Rouse. If you aren't familiar with Darren, you need to be, because over 320,000 bloggers get his newsletters. He has over 7,000 articles on his website, and he's written tons of books. In fact, when you go to moreblogreaders.com, you will see a list of Darren's books. I highly encourage you to start with 31 Days to a Better Blog. By going to moreblogreaders.com, you'll get special pricing for being a Bloggers Are Weird listener. So are you ready for more traffic and more success with your blog? Then go to moreblogreaders.com.
From there, I edited and I wrote at various magazines. I went to the New York Observer. Finally, I became the managing editor there. And then, meanwhile, I was still blogging, but I wasn't really doing a lot of freelance writing. It really wasn't until I had my son and quit my job, which I should say, by way of a disclaimer, is not probably a very sound, method for writing success. I think what happened to me is that I decided to leave my job because I wasn't really happy there. I wasn't getting paid that much, so I would have had to hand my entire salary over to a nanny. So I decided to quit and freelance, and that it forced me. I was desperate, I was making no money. I didn't know what I was going to do, and so I just sort of almost just out of feeling like I had no other options, I started working more on my writing, and I ended up but through kind of luck and coincidence and just who even knows, I ended up selling my first young adult novel, which started me on the YA fiction path, which has been kind of amazing and something that I didn't necessarily anticipate or set out to do. And then skipping forward a little bit, Listen to Your Mother is really what brought me to write Unabrow, because I had been wanting to write this book of comic essays forever, but I just didn't know how to I didn't know how to sell it. I had sent some pitches to a couple agents at one point, and they were like, "Yeah, if you're an unknown writer, you can't really sell essays because
Right.
nobody
Right.
knows who you are."
Yeah. Who
Right,
cares?
right,
Right.
exactly. And they were nice about it, but like I got the message that it was going to be a lot harder to sell a book of essays, which is partially also why I went the fiction route, because I thought it might be easier to sell a book if it was a novel. But Listen to Your Mother, I read about the audition in like early 2012. I wrote a little piece that I thought was funny about mistakes that I had made that I didn't want my son to repeat, and I auditioned and I got in. And so then I did the live reading. It was in May of 2012. And then the next day, this is just like complete dumb luck. There was a literary agent in the audience who was there supporting another woman, Patty Chang Anchor, who is an author who was also in Listen to Your Mother with me. And the agent emailed me the next day and was like, I thought your piece was so funny. I love your voice. Like, I would love to take you out to coffee and like convince you to write a book. And I was like, what the fuck? Like that is crazy. I thought for a little while that I had like gone insane and like written myself that email, because it was like too perfect. It was, I mean, obviously this comes on the heels of like, 8 years of sort of twiddling my thumbs and just sort of like plugging along without really getting anywhere. So it's not like I didn't do any preparation, but it was just when it happened, it was just crazy how it happened. So she got in touch with me. We met, she really liked me and liked my style and liked my voice, and we worked on like getting a proposal in shape for basically an essay collection, which was exactly what I'd always wanted to do. And Brittany, my agent, ended up selling it to Plume, to an editor who was equally enthusiastic and who just totally got me, and it ended up being the book that I'd always wanted to write. I feel super lucky and like not quite sure how I got here. But yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, and it's you've condensed it because it's been your life and you haven't it's like when the parents measure your growth on the side
Right,
of the
right,
door
right.
and then all of a sudden the uncle comes by, hasn't been around in 2 years, and is like, wow,
Right.
you've grown so much. But it's really an impressive amount of work that went into what was 8 years of writing. It was 4 years of blogging. It was being in the literary world. It was pitching. It was sending, doing freelance work. It's a tremendous amount of activity to ultimately get you to a place where it's like, oh yeah, somebody wants to publish
Right,
something.
exactly. I mean, looking back on it, I do feel like, I can be more generous with myself. And, because it's easy for me to think that it was just this incredibly lucky break, that I was like in the right place at the right time. And maybe that's true. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, writers, and probably everybody, but, writers especially will kind of toil and, kind of tear their hair out and wonder whether it's ever going to become anything or whether anyone's ever going to notice. And I do feel like sometimes it really does take a long time to start to get, to get to a place where, where you're in a position to really make a step up, and to just hang in there is really hard. But it's, first, I feel like for me, maybe it took longer than for other people. Like I know some people who I'll read in the blogging world who are kind of like getting, accolades or selling books have only been blogging for, maybe like 4 or 5 years, but other people have to do it for like 10 years before anything happens. And it's nuts.
Well, yeah, and I've always thought that, my thoughts is I always have that sort of belief, like the best interns get hired. And I think that, you just sort of do it for free for a really long
Yes.
time.
Hmm.
And over time, the public will let you know if you're any good.
Right.
If you have some sort of marketing strategy, to at least get in front of some eyeballs.
Right.
But, yeah, you will find out how good you are. And yeah, of course, there's luck involved with being in the right place at the right time. However, that's a perfect storm of like, lifting the weights for 8 years and then eventually going, oh yeah, I'm actually pretty strong. And,
Yeah.
and so I always say that, and again, I'm not, I haven't really, I haven't been published like yourself. And that's not a
But you
goal
did.
of mine.
You wrote
Well, so I've
things.
written a few things,
So,
but as far as, making a career of it, you know what? I loved I found that desperation is such a great motivator for people because, I look at people who are, unfortunately, they're homeless or they're addicted to some sort of, drug or alcohol, they find a way to get the drug or alcohol money,
Right.
and there's a desperation there that really brings out some amazing tenacity in human beings. So I think that when you cut off all other options, like you were saying when you left the previous job, you sort of go, well, I got to figure this out. And so all of a sudden you get really resourceful, and
Exactly. Yeah, no, it was I definitely don't think that I ever would have I don't think that I ever would have written a novel for sure. And now I've written two young adult novels that have already been published and one that's yet to be published. I never would have started on that path if I hadn't, been kind of in a desperate state. Not to say that I, don't really enjoy doing it, because I do, and it's amazing. But it just wasn't something that would have occurred to me. And same thing with Unabrow. I sort of feel like if I hadn't left my job, I probably would have just kept thinking about it, but not really doing anything about it. Like I'm pretty sure I never would have auditioned for Listen to Your Mother. I think, yeah, it just, for me, that was what I needed. And I'm glad I did it. It was very scary. It continues to be scary. I should say it by way of a disclaimer that, like, I feel so lucky for the success that I've had just in terms of publishing books, but financially it's still like so hard to freelance, and my husband freelances too, and we just sometimes look at each other like, what are we doing? Why did we
right.
choose this? Because it's really hard to make ends meet when sometimes you don't like see a check for 6 or 8 months. It's not for the faint of heart, and it has been a
Yeah,
struggle.
or if you have an advance and you've got to hit a certain production number to satisfy the
Oh
advance,
yeah,
I mean, that's scary
it's
too.
totally scary. It's like, yeah, for Unabrow. So Unabrow just came out last.
Oh, by the way, I'm going to stop you
Oh
because
yeah.
I have not introduced you,
Oh
and that
yes.
is like interviewing 101. So I am speaking to Una LaMarche, who, by the way, let's plug a few of your things right quick.
Sure.
She is online a couple of different places, and that's UNA,
Hmm.
and then LaMarche, LaMarche,
That's correct.
which, by the way, that's French, I'm assuming, or
It is.
Canadian.
Yeah, my ancestors with the last name LaMarche were French Canadian.
That's what I thought. So UnaLaMarche.com is kind of an all hub. Una, go here for kind of anything and everything. But her blog specifically is really, you're at
Yes.
volcanicensemble.blogspot.com.
Yes, it's a very long blogger URL that I've never bothered to change. Although you can also find it through the website, unalamarche.com. There's like a tab that you can read the blog through. But yes, it's volcanicensemble.blogspot.com.
Right. And you can find her on Twitter, just Sassy
Hmm.
Curmudgeon, and then probably Facebook the same way for your page,
Yep,
right?
the Sassy Curmudgeon. I have a page, and yeah,
But I do want to make one point about your Like No Other book,
sure.
because it is not just a, hey, I got published. I mean, you have been reviewed, you have been received awards. You Entertainment Weekly gave you an A minus, which
Yes.
it's not an A,
Oh
but
my
it's close.
God,
But
still the
it's I know,
highest. Like being
geez,
it, no, but being in Entertainment Weekly is literally
it's a
like
huge
that's
deal.
like that. I mean, this is going to sound sacrilegious, but that meant more to me probably than being reviewed in the New York Times, because I have been reading Entertainment Weekly since I was like 12 years old, and it is like to me there is no higher publication than Entertainment
Right.
Weekly.
Well, and it's even more difficult than that because not only were you selected and you had a great review, could have had a crappy review,
That's true.
also, and it's just one person that reviewed it, so
Yes.
it's one of the writers on the staff of the editors. I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment, and you have a number of other accolades. Publishers Weekly gave you best book in that particular book, and for the summer, and so it's a young adult novel, and
Yes.
you can find all of her stuff on Amazon. The UnaLaMarche.com, has the links to everything.
Yes.
So I do want to make a point that yes, you got an opportunity, and but you also produced. You also were able to deliver a good quality product,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
is
Yes. I mean,
just
yeah, it was hard. And I mean, I wrote two young adult books, and then Unabrow, and then a third young adult. So I would say between, I think it was like mid 2012 to like the end of 2014, I ended up writing four books, which is nuts. And and I definitely, I will give myself credit for, producing during that time. Uh, Yeah, it's been crazy. And I want to say again, like I never the young adult novels, like there are a lot of people whose dream is to write a young adult novel, and I just like I kind of lucked in, like like I sort of went that route again through a series of choices fueled mostly just by chance and and taking a risk. But I've loved it. I mean, like as much as I've always wanted to write comic essays and nonfiction stuff, I love writing fiction and I love writing for teens because I still feel so connected to that time in my life, which may not be healthy from like a therapy standpoint, but which serves me well in my fiction writing.
Well, and okay, so let's get back to you mentioned you were fired
Yes,
because of your
I was.
blog. So tell us that
Oh,
story.
sure. So, well, I got in trouble twice. The second time was actually funnier, but I lost my job. So I was working on this documentary. As I said, I majored in film. I ended up working in like documentary films, like the sorts of historical documentaries that you'll see on PBS that have like slow motion reenactments of people riding horses. That was the kind of thing that I worked on. And I was working on a documentary about the Supreme Court. And so, as part of my job, I had to go to Washington. I went to the Supreme Court archives, and at the time I was blogging and I was, I think I had only been blogging for a few months. Anything that I did was fodder for blogging. I didn't have an internal editor yet. Like, I didn't really distinguish between things that were interesting and things that weren't. I just like anything I did, I was going to put on my blog because that was just like, that was, that was the only way that I knew at that time. So I went to the Supreme Court archives and, I met like the archivist and I scanned a bunch of photos. And then of course, like I went home and I like wrote about it on my blog about how I visited the archive and I like put up some of the photos from the archive. And, um, and it took a couple of weeks, but the Supreme Court, I guess I think I had written the guy's name, the archivist's name, and my blog at this time was very small, probably like maybe a couple dozen people were reading it, but I had mentioned this guy's name. And so, somehow it got back to him and he called my boss very angry about the fact that I had put, photos that I didn't have permission to publish online. And I basically I didn't ruin the film. I mean, but I jeopardized the company that I was working for, I jeopardized their relationship with the Supreme
Sure.
Court archives. And this is a documentary about the Supreme Court. So,
Right.
I was summarily fired as I deserved to be. And, that was my first lesson in kind of being careful about what I put on the blog, but it was not my last. I got in trouble yet again at my next, or maybe a couple jobs down the line. I was working for this luxury lifestyle magazine in New York, and it was, sometimes they would have like uh, maybe like C or D list celebrities come into the office for
Sure.
things like talking like Real Housewives, that kind of level of
Sure.
celebrity. So one day I was at my little cubicle and I turned around and I saw the CEO of the company walking with Vern Troyer, aka
Oh,
Mini Me from the
well,
Austin Powers.
I thought you said C or D
I
list.
know
Didn't,
he's
didn't know you said A list.
A-list, exactly. But so he's like in a little motorized chair and he's
Right.
like zooming down the hallway. And I was like, I mean, I don't know. I just,
It's hysterical.
it's hysterical. And my first instinct, of course, was to go on my blog and write about it. And, again, I can't really explain why that. I think I just thought like it had been a couple of years since I'd gotten in trouble. I figured Vern Troyer, is not somebody who like every little ping on his name isn't going to come up.
Well,
Uh,
plus he's known for doing comedy,
right, right.
so you would think he's got a sense
Right.
of humor.
So
So
I think I just wrote some little thing about how, oh my God, I just saw Mini Me at my office and like he's like in a little motorized chair and like this is so crazy. And I guess one of my coworkers must have because when you blog sometimes I think it's easy to forget that, lots of different people might read it. You don't really know who's reading it. Sometimes it still feels like you're just writing it for yourself. So I guess there were some coworkers that, who knew that I blogged and who followed it. And so somebody, I guess, who hated me or something sent an anonymous, like sent it to my boss. And I just got a stern talking to. I didn't get fired, but I was just, I was told that, they knew about it and they were not pleased. And I was never to blog about anything that went on at the office. And which again, in retrospect seems obvious. But sometimes you have to kind of get those hand slaps to really to get it. And I would say still, I don't blog that much anymore, but But there have been multiple times that I wrote something and, that got a bad reaction from someone. And, and every time I kind of had to remind myself that it's not a private diary. It's something that's out there on the internet, and, you can hurt people's feelings. And so,
Oh yeah, I mean, I've done it many times, and it's funny. I don't. Well, people have told me, there may be other times where nobody's
right.
courageously addressed me, but it's funny. Every time it's happened for me, I had a little pang in my inside prior to hitting publish. It wasn't anything I'd ever wrote anything salacious or
Right.
but I just sort of was like, well, I'm talking about somebody else, and maybe I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And every time, it happened, I went, oh, good. I did have some sort of internal mechanism that let me, I just ignored it and did it. But it's, like for I had a popular thing, is probably the most popular thing I ever did, which is sad because it was like 4 years ago. But it was something I wrote about my dad. We had a few sort of funny penis
Yes,
related
of
stories.
course I know that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wrote about it, and I didn't ask his permission,
Right.
which is really a pretty obvious, like, yeah, you should probably ask about that. And while he doesn't have the notoriety of Vern Troyer, he still has friends and whatever. And the only people reading my blog at that time were family friends, and so it wasn't like it would never ever get to him in
Right.
any particular way. But and my dad didn't have a Google alert with his name attached to it, but and he reads everything I write,
Right.
so that's even worse. So I kind of went, God, it's pretty funny. I don't want to lose the story, and screw it. I'm just going to hope that it all plays out well. And thankfully, he called me the next day and said, I read your thing, and I'm like, oh no, this is.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I loved it. It was really good. And so I got lucky in that respect. But it is funny because I think bloggers, do have to sort of figure out what those boundaries are. And my girlfriend now has just straight up told me, hey, please, and she's a blogger herself. That's not what
Yeah.
she does professionally, but she does things on TV, and she's but somewhat public, but it's not, she doesn't not want me to write about her for the fact that she doesn't want her information out there. I have a lot of women who read my blog, probably a lot more women than men, and I don't, just kind of, maybe more women read blogs, I don't know, but
Yeah,
it's
probably that's true.
yeah, and it's funny because while I don't get flirted with, I mean, I don't get any
Oh,
inappropriate.
she's
There's a
afraid
little.
of the crowd. Yeah, because they're gonna come
No,
after her.
they do, and they do.
Oh
And
man.
and look, I don't get the, I think as a woman who's, a blogger, I'm sure, everyone has, gotten at least one creepy guy who,
Yeah,
but
but
I've never had that. But I think there's just somebody who maybe reads me constantly feels like they have some sort of, just inherent relationship with me. And so not in a romantic way, but
no,
just in a sort of, they're connected to me in some way. And so when I mentioned my girlfriend, I think, and women are kind of wired up through DNA to sort of compete. And I mean, that's just kind of the nature of how your wiring is. And so I think that sort of gets activated. And so if I write about her and even remotely joke about something that paints her in a humorous light, or, I mean, people go after her.
right.
And I wrote a story about, hey, I have a cat and she's allergic to cats. And so when we first started dating, I realized, oh, this could be the one, for life. I kind of thought, I love my cat more than anything, but she's allergic. And do I really want, she's only 6 and they might live to 20. And it's like, do I really want to put my wife future wife through,
Right.
Misery for the rest?
Right.
And she's not, I mean, it's a real consideration. And the easy answer for a lot of people is, well, especially cat lovers, is, well, she should just get used to it. It's like, well, that's not entirely always fair,
Right.
So I had to sort of think about it, and I sort of came to a decision like, hey, she's never asked me to get rid of the cat, but it might just be one of those, she would never ask me, and maybe it's just the right thing to do, even though it would totally tear me apart. It's probably it's that like Sophie's Choice thing, you might just have to do it. And so I just kind of wrote about that, and I really tried to make sure I took her out of it as like, this is not about her, this is about me thinking about, hey, what's more important, my
Right.
wife's comfort or my cat?
Right.
And, yeah, the wife trumps the cat,
Yeah.
And so it was a very thing, and people just completely misunderstood because I probably didn't write it very effectively, and really were like, well, screw her, and
Right.
and all of
Oh
a sudden
man.
she's like, hey,
Yeah.
do me a favor.
Yeah.
Like, let's not invoke the ire of your readers who she believes have a crush on me, which I
Yeah.
don't think they do.
Oh,
But
but I
you
mean,
know,
even if they, yeah, it's like it's tough because whenever you write about somebody who is close to you and important to you, especially if you're somebody who writes humor, sometimes something that you mean in a very joking way, like could translate differently to people who don't know the person who read it. That's a scary thought, and especially for you, like if you know that they are kind of targeting her or like predisposed to dislike her. That's
well, and I've had other relationships which I've talked about. Not the relationship so much. I just talk about funny events.
right.
So it's never like, oh, I'm pissed at my girlfriend because she said something mean. I mean, we I don't do that. I just write about, oh, she slipped and fell on her in her high heels, and isn't that funny?
Right.
Or something like that. Which who cares? But there's a story around it, and so I've done that. And then finally, she just said, hey, you know what? I hate to be the person to say you shouldn't write about
Yeah.
something, but could you not just don't write about me?
Oh yeah.
And which is actually great because then it enables me to then focus really more on myself, which is really what people probably want anyway.
Yeah.
And it makes it harder because I'm not utilizing the stories of others, which to me is kind of an easy thing for me to
Oh
do. Like if
yeah.
I see somebody slip and fall, I can write a story about
Yeah.
it. But if I just sit around and watch TV all day, it's like, okay, I got to come up with some content, and nothing
Yeah.
happened to me
Yeah.
today. So talk about that. Where do
Yeah.
you find? Obviously, it's the question every writer gets asked. It's a terrible question, but where do you look for content? How
Well,
do you go about that?
yeah, I mean, I feel like what you just said really resonates with me because I think that if you're somebody who writes mostly about your own life and yourself and to some extent the other people who you interact with, it creates a difficult, decision that you have to make about how much you're willing to kind of write about other people and situations outside of you. I mean, I think that um, I have historically just been inspired by things that have happened to me or experiences that I've had that have resonated with me or sometimes like I said I'll write about cultural things that strike me that I feel like I have a funny or unique perspective on and I've gotten better at it. I would say that like the more that I write just about my own life and kind of day-to-day experiences, the better I get at kind of recognizing, how you could build a story from something that might be kind of small. Like even just going to the drugstore and finding yourself, buying condoms next to a stranger, like that could be like
Right.
something
Oh, it's
that,
hysterical.
right. So
Yeah.
it's like, so I feel like, but I run into the same thing that you run into, which is I, if I write about myself, I mean, I think that there's value in writing about yourself. I think that obviously, in some cases, it can be very narcissistic or navel gazing, and I think that there's some
Sure.
there's some inherent, obviously, there's some inherent self. I don't know if it's self obsession or just self interest. There's obviously something inherent about people who choose to write mostly about themselves. They're very interested in analyzing their own experiences, but I
Sure.
think that can be valuable, both for the person writing because it helps you to process, your feelings. It helps you to figure out kind of what, your place in the world is, what your views are, like what you care about. But I think it can help other people because if you're writing about something that is, I feel like most of the time, if you're writing about a human experience, someone else will be able to relate to it. Um, but I also run into the problem of feeling like I don't want to be writing exclusively about myself.
Sure.
Because again, there's the worry that if you turn too inward, you're kind of missing the outside view. But I've made a decision in my writing that I don't. I try to involve the people in my life only to a small degree. Like I'm a huge fan of David Sedaris, and but I don't think that I could ever, really kind of make judgment. Not necessarily. I don't know if he's passing judgment, but it's like I don't know if I could ever really write in depth about somebody in my life in a way that characterizes them from my perspective, because I sort of feel like, for me personally, I just don't feel like that's necessarily my place. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of, writing something about them, or anytime that you write about someone, you're basically telling them how you see them, and I think that can be a little sensitive.
Well, also you're telling their story,
Right.
which may or may not be what they want. But with somebody like David Sedaris, I think unless you come from such an extreme family, which seems to have a huge sense of humor, which is where that
Right,
space he's in,
right.
and he's sisters in the same space. And I think you would, it'd be a little easier to probably pass that through the family filter.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But a lot of us have, thankfully I have, my parents are the same way. Growing up for us, it was, if it's funny, it's
Right.
okay.
Yeah, and
So,
yeah, go ahead.
but for a lot of people, they have crazy, or different people who just don't have those, they're private,
Yeah.
or,
Well,
whatever.
exactly. I mean, my parents have kind of accepted it. Like my parents, as long as I write things that I think they could kind of laugh at themselves, I try to, I mean, there are a lot of things that I would like to write about because they're things that I find funny, or kind of telling, or things, or even things, honestly, that like are not that funny, but that are important to me. Like, especially if you're writing about your parents or a partner, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that you could write about things that they have said or done that have made you feel poorly or like have affected you in some deep way, but you don't necessarily want to air that, especially since you don't want, if you have readers who are much more likely to be on your side, you don't want to kind of feel like you're ganging up on someone, or just sharing something that they would be uncomfortable with. So yeah, that's the tough thing I think about blogging. And I mean, there's been such a discussion too. We don't necessarily have to get into this because it's a much larger discussion, but just about, how much, if you're a blogger and you're writing about your life, like exposing your life and the people in your life, like where do you draw the line between what's kind of, you're sort of putting it out there, but then, there's also a feeling that maybe the people who you're writing about deserve privacy, especially if we're talking about kids. Like I think about that all the time with my son, whether how much I can write about him without feeling like I'm somehow exploiting or exposing him in some way that he might not appreciate. It's so hard to know. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it is. And there's, at least for me, what I want to know when I'm writing, and I've been in therapy for like 6 years. I go every week, and so I have just I'm conditioned now to sort of slant inwards in looking at what's my motivation here? What am I trying to accomplish? Because a lot of that was for me very unconscious until I started doing some of that kind of work. And now when I write about myself or about other people, I tend to sort of, because I can probably find the jokes, like that's pretty. I've just been doing that for so long.
right.
I can write the story, but the question is, am I looking for validation? Am I looking for attention? Am I looking to passive aggressively, talk about someone else? And what's the purpose here? And if I can honestly say, yeah, I am kind of looking for validation, then I sort of go, okay, well, maybe I introduce that into the story and talk about, here's why I'm bragging about this one particular thing. Or, if it's about somebody else and it's maybe not so positive, I then go, okay, oh, I'm really mad at that person.
Right, right.
And by sort of really not thinking about, well, what I think about what their reaction would be, but really more important is like, why am I doing this? And so if I can then sort of make peace with whatever that is, and I don't know if you have a similar sort of process, we're able to go like, oh, here's what I'm doing. Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
caught myself.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I do sort of have the same process. I mean, I try to think about when I'm sharing, a story, like I try to be I mean, it's impossible to be objective, obviously, if you're talking about something that you're writing about yourself. But just, yeah, trying to figure out, is this going to have some meaning, some value for other people? Does this have something that, they can relate to? Am I just kind of, yeah, like, am I telling the story because, just because I think it's really funny, or will other people find it funny too? And then when I'm writing about somebody else, again, I feel like when I write about my husband Jeff, I generally have asked him beforehand, and like I had this whole series on the blog for a while called Scenes from a Marriage, and
Right.
I would just write our little conversations verbatim, and they were usually things that were funny, and he would, I would ask him first. I don't think I ever published it without asking him, but there would be they usually weren't fights, they were funny things. I mean, I try really hard, like if we have a fight or something, I feel like that's something that's a little dangerous to write about, because then it then it's kind of only showing my side. And in the book, I have an essay about him, which he read. And, I think that he really thought it was fine. I think his only complaint with my writing about him is that he thinks I give myself all the best lines and that he's like, he's sort of the straight man and I'm like the comic, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, duh. Like it's my book, of course I'm gonna know. But I think that's, so he's very funny and I think that he feels a little robbed of that in my writing because of course I tend to make myself the center of it and he just becomes like more of a supporting character, which in life is not. I mean, perhaps that's how I see my life. We all see our lives, I think, unless I'm insane, as, we're kind of the star of the show and everyone else is just like characters in our story. But of course, the other person is not going to see it that way.
Well, yeah, and I think if we all, I think as a blogger, if we sort of get the narcissism part of it and just kind of go, yeah, okay, I sort of have a little need to get validation or I need to show my importance or whatever, I think, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. It's just a thing. And
Right.
I think a lot, I have that for
I
sure.
think
I
most
don't,
bloggers do it. I think it would be hard to
yeah,
be a blog. I mean, I think just by definition, if you're writing about your own life on the internet for public consumption, like you're looking for validation. I think that's just true.
yeah. Well, and I know we only have a little bit of time, and
Sure.
I apologize because I wanted to do this at the beginning, so I'm going to put a little disclaimer at the
Yeah,
beginning
yeah.
because we didn't really promote the book. So
Oh, that's okay.
first, I want to have you read something as well. So I want
Sure.
to. The whole reason Una's on the show is because she has her new book that just went live. What, 2 days ago, maybe? And
On
it's
Tuesday, yeah. So it's been
yeah,
like, yeah.
3 days ago.
Mhm.
So yeah, Unabrow,
Yes.
which her name is Oona, of course, and it is aptly titled because, of course, you'll have to look at the cover to get the joke, which is
Yes, it's a real
obviously
photo of me. Some people have asked me if it's me, and yes, it's me, and it's real.
oh yes, no, you are a hairy person. You but yeah, so tell me, and again, this is a collection of stories. This is not on the young adult side. This is just a collection of humorous essays from your life.
Hmm.
It is out in bookstores
Hmm.
and it is on Amazon and everywhere
Yeah.
else. So you can find it on unalamarche.com, which will then link you to the Amazon site, and as well as it's in, I guess, just about all the major bookstores
Yeah,
as
I would
well.
hope
So.
so. I think so. Yeah, that's supposed to be.
Now do you go into the bookstores
No.
and then sign? You got to go in and then just
And like
not.
sign them without asking
Yes,
them.
because then they can't return
That's a
them.
good
That's
point.
that's an old trick.
That's a
Yeah,
good
you can't
point.
return it, and then maybe just put a little and then yeah, oh yeah, that's I got to make that advance back.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'll
I know it's scary to think that it's out there and, now I have like no control over what happens unless I go into every bookstore and start signing all the books, which now I'm going to do.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and so are you going to read from the book
yeah,
today, or are you
yeah,
reading
sure.
from
No,
the blog?
I'll definitely read from the book. Yeah, the blog, I don't update very often anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, it lived a long and prosperous life for about I don't know, about 6 years. So the archives are all online. But I'm going to read from the book. So the book is a collection of essays. Just from the tagline or the subtitle is Misadventures of a Late Bloomer. So the kind of thing that holds it together in a general sense is that they're essays about experiences that I've had or things that I've dealt with where I feel like I didn't handle the situation with the utmost grace, and trying to kind of impart the what not to do in these kinds of rites of passage situations. So the book is about spans childhood to present and parenthood and career and marriage, but the part that I think that the part of our lives often that kind of reveals the most about us and certainly reveals the most about me is adolescence. And so I'm just going to read the beginning of an essay about my adolescence. And I will make it relatively short, but
No,
it will give you
go right ahead.
it will give you a good sense of kind of my inner life and the person that I still am to this day. So the essay is called "A Scar is Born." Okay. Picture this. You are standing on an auditorium stage cloaked in darkness. The audience, made up of your family, friends, entire elementary school class, and the original cast of Beverly Hills 90210, titters nervously. They don't know what to expect, but you do. You have been waiting for this moment your entire life. The spotlight comes on as the first note rings out across the cavernous room, and even though you're temporarily blinded, you can tell from the audible gasps that you look amazing in your skin-tight iridescent jumpsuit and high-heeled boots, your normally limp hair a halo of Diana Ross curls. You raise the microphone to your lips and, feeling your heart thump in your chest like a drum circle of angels, sing the first lines of Madonna's Like a Prayer. To everyone's shock and awe, you sound exactly like Madonna, and the fifth grade orchestra sounds exactly like professional studio musicians. Somehow they've even gotten their hands on an electric guitar and full-size church organ. Jason Priestley is already on his feet giving you a standing ovation before you finish the first verse, and you allow yourself to smile a little bit, knowing that the best is yet to come. It was hard to find a gospel choir who would perform for your pittance of an allowance, but as luck would have it, the very first Harlem church you walked into in your immaculately white Reebok high tops welcomed you with open arms, and when they heard your sultry alto, surprisingly rich and sexual for someone so young, tears streamed down the singers' faces as they closed their eyes and swayed, waving their arms as if inviting God himself to bear witness to your gift. You made their robes at home, dousing your mother's eggplant-colored bedsheets in glitter, and when the moment arrives, as stagehands pull back the thick curtains to reveal 24 sparkling backup dancers belting out the chorus, a roar emanates from the crowd almost loud enough to drown out the bass synthesizer. By the time the smoke machine starts and you're lifted into the air on your hidden platform to bring it on home, news crews are bursting through the auditorium doors, stumbling over each other in their haste to capture even a moment of this miracle, to share with people who are suffering and in need of a reminder that there's still magic in this world. Are you still picturing it? Great. Now you know what it felt like to live inside my head at age 12. Madonna's immaculate collection notwithstanding, almost all of my favorite music was produced between 1991 and 1994. Salt and Peppa, En Vogue, Boyz II Men, Naughty by Nature, these are my totally unironic, non-guilty pleasures. Even one-hit wonders from forgotten stars like Sophie B. Hawkins and the unfortunately surnamed CeCe Peniston make me swoon. And my obsession with the early 90s doesn't start and stop with the Billboard Hot 100. I love saying Boutros Boutros Ghali. I own both a Cross Colors jacket and a stack of sassy magazines that I won on eBay. No movie will ever be as perfect as Reality Bites. I consider the Oscars a miserable failure if Billy Crystal doesn't enter on horseback, and despite how wrong it is, I still think Eric Menendez was hot. A part of me will always live in 1993. I think I'll stop there.
You are a real goddamn writer. I love that.
Thank you.
Yes. So go, please go pick up Unabrow. I am in the process of reading it myself, and I love everything that you do. So
thank you so much, DJ. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm a legitimately huge fan, and the cool thing about my dumb podcast is I don't I don't like do it professionally for a living. So I just literally pick the people I actually like to talk to because that's why not.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I think it's great. I mean, I love listening to podcasts, and I think listening to, to bloggers talk about what they do is really interesting because, it's such a solitary pursuit. And it's also, I find there's such a really interesting sort of dichotomy between the person who the version of yourself that you put out there on your blog and online and on Twitter and on Facebook and the person you really are. I feel like there's always kind of two versions, and it's so interesting to, listen to somebody's voice and really like hear who they are.
So I just want to know two quick things.
Yes.
One, how did you get involved with the Huffington Post?
Oh,
because every blogger I know dreams of being published on the Huffington Post. So can you talk quickly about
of course. So that was kind of my first victory of blogging was that so sometime in like 2009 when I'd been blogging for 3 years, I had enough like of an audience, and still it was pretty small. I'm thinking maybe I had like 1,000 people, but it had grown enough that I was getting people who I didn't know who were reading it, and I wrote a lot about stuff that I watched on TV. I kind of made fun of fashion. I wrote about things that I watched, like I think Project Runway. And one of the editors at the Huffington Post had stumbled across my blog and emailed me, to ask if I would ever consider, writing for them, and either kind of just blogging or recapping a TV show. So of course I jumped at the chance, and I found that it's amazing. Like, so Ariana Huffington, you would think that Ariana Huffington like has way better things to do than respond to all of her email. However, when I first got hooked up with the Huffington Post, I wrote her an email because her email is just like Ariana at thehuffingtonpost.com or something like that. And I was like, I'm going to be writing for you. Thank you so much. Like, I'm so excited. Da da da. She like emailed me back within like 5 seconds. She's every time I've ever emailed Ariana Huffington, she has emailed me right back. So it was just, yeah, it was luckily somebody who happened to have some influence there had read the blog. So now I can sort of, I think it's not, I have a log on, so I can kind of like write blogs and just like post them. But I know a lot of other bloggers have had a lot of success with just like submitting, to the editors there. I mean, my experience with them has been that they are very open to new voices, and of course, they're like an aggregate site. They want to get as many things on there as possible for people to read. So I would encourage anyone who wants to blog for the Huffington Post to really just like go for it, to find the contact emails for the editors of your favorite vertical, and just email them, and like they'll republish something that you already wrote on your blog. They don't care. So it's one of those things that now that I'm in, I feel like it's not I mean it's a great honor, and it's a wonderful thing, but now I feel like it's not as hard as I had thought that it was, sort of like I think that anyone who really has the will and who is a good writer, can get on the Huffington Post. So go
Well,
for
yeah,
it.
I mean, whatever the objective is for, working with either a publisher or an online, aggregator or news distributor or, a brand. I always say I don't think it's that hard because if you went, not you, but I tell bloggers, why don't you just pick 20 brands that you want to work with, find them on Twitter, go to their, corporate sites, figure out who these people are who might be in that department, send them all emails, send them tweets, send them, it's not, call them. It's not that difficult. And I suspect very few people do that.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I always say be willing to do it for free because
Yep.
what an awesome thing to do to a brand and say, you know what? I like you so much. I'm willing to earn a spot on your roster. Let me write some stuff for free. And if you like it, maybe down the road we could figure out something out. But I mean, who would say, I always tell people it's not that complicated. It's really hard because you have to just, go to the gym and lift the weights. But
Right.
if you do it, you get the benefit. And eventually people who do get book deals, have done so much work to get there. And so I think, it sounds like that was a similar message to what you were just saying. It's just like, hey, reach out and see what
Yeah. I mean,
happens.
for me, again, like I feel like the lesson in my case is slightly less inspiring because she reached out to me. But I completely agree with you. I think that I think that really the main difference, obviously, there are so many people who are extremely talented who have very high profile careers. There are also many, many people who are extremely talented, maybe even more talented, who don't. And I think that the only difference is really putting yourself out there. And I, like I said, it took me so long to do that for myself. It took me, a good 10 years all told of kind of like psyching myself up. And it finally just, the only way that I ever put myself out there was when I felt like I had no other choice. So some people, it doesn't come that easily to them, but I would encourage you, if you're, wanting to sell a book, if you're wanting to write for some high profile website, just, yeah, like, I mean, I really think so much of it is just getting up the courage to put yourself out there and to do it. And I think that actually gets amazing results a lot of the time.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever got a chance to read Stephen Pressfield's The Art of or The War of
I
Art.
didn't know.
Oh, you have to. It's great. It's just a twist on the art of war, but it's the war of art. He was a writer anyway. You can check it out. But I recommend any writer who's struggling with continuing read it because he basically he published The Legend of Bagger Vance and a few
Oh,
others, but
wow.
he's published 50 other novels that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
And he basically just said, yeah, just sit down and write and do that forever and fight against a tendency to quit and just kind of he's just like shut up and bust your ass kind of thing. And it's so obvious and true and simple. He does it in a lot more poetic way, but it's exactly it. Just keep writing and you'll get better and take classes and interact and reach out to other bloggers or writers and go to the events and et cetera. And then eventually you just find, oh my God, 10 years have gone by and I'm actually opportunities are coming. So
Exactly, exactly. No, I believe that 100%.
Well, I will. Let's all go to unalamarche.com and also Amazon and local bookstore. And I don't know which is better for you, digital
Oh,
or print.
anything, whatever. Seriously, any person who buys and reads my book is doing me a great favor and giving me a great gift. So I do not care how you do it.
And I understand that getting praise or skewered on Goodreads.com is like everything to an author. I don't know. Is that in the young adult case as well?
Honestly, I have not read. I don't tend to read the reviews of my books that people write on Goodreads and Amazon, and it's not because I don't appreciate them, because there are a lot of really thoughtful, really positive reviews, but it's because I know myself well enough to know that, like, the negative reviews, people who don't like my books or don't
Sure.
like my writing, would really affect me. And even reading the positive reviews, sometimes it just feels like it's information that I just don't really know how to process or what to do with, because it's just hard to know how to work that into your kind of life. So I tend to shield myself from that. But
It's a smart move because it's limited upside.
Right. But I
It's
really do
it's
appreciate, I mean, anyone who takes the time to write about, the book, whether it's, I mean, preferably good, but even if it's bad, even if someone wants to go on Amazon and, really tear me a new one for using so many curse words, I appreciate that you took the time to do that, sir, that you escaped from the mental institution long enough.
Well, that's going to be mostly women who do that.
Yeah, that's
I don't,
true.
but anyway, yeah, it is. Women love to hate women, but that's okay because you've got obviously a million fans as well. So it's such an honor to have you. I know that you had to take time out of your Saturday, and your
Oh,
family.
of course.
So I greatly appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Go buy Una's newest book, Unabrow, as well as her other young adult novels, and then you'll have future books coming. It sounds
Yes.
like a number of them at a quite a fast clip.
Well,
So,
hopefully, yes. Thank you so much, DJ. Thanks for having me.
all right, we'll say goodbye.
Okay, bye.